Greetings, friends. Today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine as of November 10th, 2025. A large number of very important events occurred today that are fundamentally changing the operational situation on several key sections of the front. So let's get started with a detailed analysis. Zaporizhzhia direction. Breakthrough of defense gains momentum. Let's begin with the Zaporizhzhia sector of the front, where the Russian army continues active offensive operations on both the western and eastern flanks. Today, a number of cartographic services, mainly pro-Russian ones, reported that Russian forces managed to significantly improve their positions in the settlement of Stepnogorsk. Stepnogorsk, establishing fire control. Russian units managed to advance in the fields between the settlements of Stepnogorsk and Orekhov. But the most important advancement is the establishment of complete fire control over the Stepnogorsk citadel located in the northern part. In fact, the western road was completely cut off, according to various cartographic services. The road going in the northeastern direction is under complete fire control of the Russian army. In numerous footage, we can observe civilian vehicles that came under attack by FPV drone operators of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. All these events indicate that most likely, in the near future, Russian units will be able to completely isolate this quarter from the main territory and clear it, after which Russian forces will reach operational space and will be able to move further towards settlements such as Veselyanka, Grigorovka, and of course eastward toward Orekhov. In the area of Mala Tokmachka, hostilities continue, but everything here comes down to positional battles. The Ukrainian side is no longer as actively storming Russian positions, understanding that it will no longer be possible to dislodge the Russians from here. Russian forces previously consolidated in the central part of Mala Tokmachka, and now it is impossible to dislodge them. Strikes are being delivered on AFU positions in the area of Novodanilovka settlement and in the southern part of Orekhov settlement. Regarding the Orekhov direction in general, fierce fighting is underway in the area of Stepnogorsk settlement, as well as in the southern part of Primorske settlement. AFU positions in the area of Mala Katarinivka settlement were attacked. FPV drones are reaching here. Also in Primorsky settlement itself, strikes from Russian aviation were recorded. In the areas of Lukyansivska and Pavlivka, strikes were delivered on AFU positions using FPV drones. Huliaipol direction, rapid offensive, after taking Uspanivka. Next we move to the Huliaipol direction, from where the most important news is coming today. Today the map underwent substantial changes that demonstrate the rapidity of the Russian offensive. Chronology of events in recent days. Let's look at how events developed. This is how the map looked back on November 8, 2025. This was actually the moment when, after a short regrouping, after Russian units cleared the Uspanivka fortified area, they transitioned to a new offensive. Let me emphasize again, Uspanivka had just been cleared, and now Russian units in a very short period of time stabilized the situation, cleared the territory, regrouped and began moving further west and southwest. And already on November 9th, the first cartographic services made corrections. Russian units confidently moved toward the settlement of Sladki, which is located slightly west of Privolny. Russian units are also rapidly advancing toward the settlements of Nov and Novospenivska from the south. Also on November 9th, information was received about the complete clearing of the settlement of Ribina. Not only information was received, but also objective control footage. Current situation on November 10th. And now today, November 10, 2025, Russian units are clearing almost all the settlements we just talked about. As you can see, as a result of the rapid offensive, Russian units managed to completely clear the settlement of Sladka. Some pro-Ukrainian sources report that the forest belt between Uspanivka and Sladka has already come under full Russian control, and Russian forces entered the settlement of Sladka. The Russian army also managed to completely clear the settlement or its northern part of the settlement of Novi. Novospanivska is still apparently under the control of the armed forces of Ukraine. However, this settlement has already been caught in pincers, and apparently, in the near future, the Ukrainian side will be forced to retreat from this direction toward Rivnopilia and Yablunkove. That is, in fact, toward the last line of defense before the settlement of Huliaipol. Today, pro-Russian sources published footage 1 minute 25 seconds long, in which we can observe how these heavy battles for the settlements of Sladka and Novouspannivske proceeded. In this footage, we can also observe several episodes of Russian soldiers quite freely raising and waving Russian flags. That is, based on this footage, we see that the defense in the Huliaipol direction has virtually completely collapsed. Importance of taking Uspannivka. Let me remind you that Uspannivka was one of the most difficult fortified areas that Russian forces could not take for a long time. They bypassed this settlement from both north and south. And now, having taken this settlement under their control, forces have been freed up. And now advancement is taking place further in the direction of the supply road to Huliaipol. Let me remind you that a key supply road to Huliaipol passes through this territory. Literally the last line of defense remains. This is Rivnopilia, Yablunove, and also Zaporizhzhia. Of course, there are still settlements like Vesele, Zelensky High, Chervone. However, apparently in this direction, the Ukrainian side will not be able to organize any even remotely serious defense. Russian forces are pressing on the settlements of Vesele, Zelensky High, and Vysoke. Daily strikes are being delivered here on AFU temporary deployment points, on AFU positions using FPV drones. No advancement is being recorded here yet, but nevertheless news is coming that Russian forces are expanding the control zone west of the settlements of Poltavka and Malinivka. Ribna under full control. As for the settlement of Rybin, today 4 video materials came from this settlement from different points. Russian forces installed flags of the Russian Federation in several places. Let me remind you that Rybin had allegedly already come under Russian control. News came, information came, but only today video materials arrived about the transition of this settlement under full Russian control, as well as about the expansion of the control zone. Orestopil and Velikomichailivka. Preparation for assault information is also coming that Russian units are delivering diversion strikes toward the settlements of Orestopil and Velikomichailivka. Speaking about Orestopil and Velikomichailivka, high activity of Russian units has been noted here over the past several days. There is a very difficult to cross Vovcha River here, and complete fire control has been established over it. Therefore, the Ukrainian side is unable to transfer a sufficient number of units to the south to stabilize the situation. This is how the map looked back on November 7, 2025, literally a day before the Russian Ministry of Defense announced the clearing of Vovche. After Vovche, the Russian side, without delay, began moving toward the settlement of Orestopil. And already on the 10th, the first news appeared that Russian units managed to almost completely clear the southwestern part of this small village located at the foot of Velikomichailivka. Moreover, this information today was provided not only by pro-Russian sources and experts, but also by pro-Ukrainian cartographic services. Approximately 60% of the settlement of Orestopil is already marked as a grey zone, which indicates that Russian saboteurs are already actively working on the territory of this village. Today there was a huge number of FAB strikes on AFU temporary deployment points, on AFU positions, in the area of Orestopil and Velikomichailivka. Everything indicates that these settlements are now being prepared for assault operations. Russian military tactics are as follows. First, strikes are delivered on temporary deployment points, also on AFU positions using FABs, and then assault operations follow. And possibly, here in the coming week, there will be assault operations on these settlements. Russian forces are also expanding the control zone and pressing toward the settlement of Danilivka. So far without changes on the map, but nevertheless news is already coming about the expansion of the control zone. News is also coming that Russian forces are expanding the control zone north of the settlement of Novoalexandrivka. Further north on the map, there are confirmed changes that relate to yesterday. Earlier, there was already news from the settlement of Oleksiivka that Russian forces were expanding the control zone. And today, confirming information was received. All this territory north of Novoalexandrivka came under Russian control over yesterday. Pokrovsk direction. Clearing of the pocket. Continues next, we move to the Pokrovsk direction, from where very important news is also coming. Literally from the first day of forming the pocket on the territory of the Pokrovsk agglomeration, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation began saying that the clearing of settlements such as Hanatovka and Ri was being completed, Hanatovka taken under full control. If you look at the maps of various cartographers, the majority have long ago colored the settlement of Hanatovka in favor of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. However, despite the fact that the majority of experts already colored Hanatovka in favor of the armed forces of the Russian Federation, quite strong resistance still remained on the territory of this small village located in the southeastern part of the city of Pokrovsk. AFU units found themselves surrounded, and apparently these 2 weeks the Russian army was directly engaged in clearing. And today the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, as well as various telegram channels affiliated with the group of forces responsible for this direction, published footage in which we can observe how Russian units are raising the flag on the territory of Hanatovka. This information is also confirmed by the Ministry of Defense. This is, let's say, the first settlement in the Pokrovsk agglomeration that was completely cleared since the beginning of the pocket formation. That is, there are still settlements like Ri, there is also the settlement of Rivne, there is Svitle, there is, of course, Suki Yar. All these settlements Russian units will still be clearing. But apparently in the near future, the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation will confirm control over the settlement of Ri as well. Tightening of the pocket. Various cartographic services are supplementing the map around the Pokrovsk agglomeration. Pro-Ukrainian cartographers are reducing the grey zone in favor of Russian army control. Various neutral cartographers are completing the clearing of the northern parts of Pokrovsk. And if we talk about Mirnohorad, advancement is also noted here by various sources. We see that the noose around the Pokrovsk agglomeration and Mirnohorad pocket continues to tighten, and with each day it becomes increasingly difficult for AFU units to be in this area. But as we see, so far no one has given any order to retreat, although perhaps it has already arrived, and now the Ukrainian army is simply waiting for the most advantageous moment. Dobropilya salient, contradictory information. From the Dobropilya salient, a huge amount of news is coming, and there is also contradictory information. Therefore, today there are no serious changes on the map here, but everything needs to be discussed. Rodinsky holds. Let's start with Rodinsky. Here Ukrainian military continue to pressure this settlement, going into assault operations from the northern part of Rodinsky settlement. But all assault groups are actually being broken up on approach using FPV drones and artillery. A huge number of FPV crews are working here from the Russian army side, and these crews are not allowing the AFU to advance in the area of Rodinsky settlement. Therefore, here today, there are no significant changes. Shakov pocket. Struggle for initiative. Next, we move toward the Shakov pocket, from where very important news is coming that we would like to draw your attention to. Today, slightly south of Zaporizhzhia, footage of strikes using aviation on armed forces of Ukraine positions is being published. This is very important footage, based on which we conclude that the settlement of Zaporizhzhia is under the control of Ukrainian formations. This is how the map looked yesterday, and note that, according to the majority of experts, Zaporizhzhia was already under AFU control. We only kept this territory in the grey zone until additional information was received, and today we received this information. Accordingly, we are coloring it in favor of the Ukrainian side. On the other hand, today very important footage is coming from the territory of the settlement of Shakov. Information is coming that Russian units have gained a foothold in the northeastern part of Shakov and are gradually advancing. That is, we see that the Russian side is not retreating in this direction. We see that it is regrouping and also is not abandoning its original goal to completely clear the entire Shakov pocket. And apparently the Russian army has succeeded somewhat in this moment over the past several days. As for the settlements of Nova Shakova and Nikonarivka, Ukrainian military are trying to consolidate and equip positions in these settlements. Let me remind you that Nova Shakova was previously under Russian control, after which the AFU knocked out the Russians. The Russians were forced to roll back, but this settlement is now in a grey zone. A huge number of FPV crews are working on this settlement, on AFU positions, and it is reported that the AFU are now trying to consolidate in this settlement, but FPV crews are not allowing this to be done. As for the settlements of Vladimirovka and Shakov, yesterday news came that Vladimirovka is completely under Russian control, and Russian forces are preparing assault operations toward the settlement of Shakov. Today in the morning, news came that Zelensky has some Plan B, Plan C, and now Ukrainian military have begun assault operations precisely from the side of Shakov settlement toward Vladimirovka settlement and toward Pankivka settlement. Thus, fierce fighting is underway here. For now, the front line here is not changing. A lot of controversial information is coming here. Chasiv Yar, rare AFU success. In the Kostyantinivka direction, there are no serious changes today. The only changes are in the area of Chasiv Yar settlement. As for news, fierce fighting is underway in the area of Pleshcheyivka settlement, Ivanivske. Some sources report that Ivanivske has actually come under Russian control, along with Pleshcheyivka. Let me remind you that previously there were reports from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation that Pleshcheyivka is under Russian control, but confirming information from here never arrived. As for changes in Chasiv Yar, video material came from one point, showing the forward positions of the AFU. The AFU occupied this micro-district completely and cleared it. At the same time, all the territory marked on the map has today been completely cleared and came under AFU control. Here, advancement in favor of Ukrainian military amounted to up to 900 meters. Thus, we can conclude that here the defense of the RF armed forces has weakened somewhat. Perhaps in the near future, there will be advancement of Ukrainian forces somewhat deeper into this settlement. Siversk direction, breakthrough to the city. In the Siversk direction, news and significant changes are coming. The news is all the same. Active assault operations are underway in the area of Zvanivka settlement. AFU positions in the area of Siversk settlement are also being attacked, and strikes are being delivered on AFU positions in the area of Platonivka settlement. As for changes, all the territory on the approaches to Siversk came under Russian control. Here advancement amounted to up to 2 kilometers. Video material came from one point, showing Russian military clearing a large AFU strongpoint. Let me remind you that fortification lines are indicated on the maps here, and the clearing of precisely these fortification lines was carried out here. Thus, we can conclude that Russian forces have already closely approached Siversk itself. In the coming days, we may see the clearing of the next section of combat operations. There are also fortification lines here. Previously, Russian forces cleared one section of combat operations. Today they are clearing this section, and in the coming days, serious changes are expected here. Let me remind you that according to some data, about 2,000 AFU military are located in Siversk on the flanks, who are located in the southern part, also located in the eastern part, and located in the northern part. Kupiansk direction, offensive on the city. Continues from the Kupiansk direction, both news and changes are coming. Changes affected the central part, more precisely, the southern part of Kupiansk. Video material came from one point, showing forward positions, and according to reports from pro-Russian sources, here advancement amounted to up to 1 kilometer in this settlement. Video material also came from another point. Here Russian forces advanced 400 meters, and all this territory came under full Russian control. Just recently, literally 2 days ago, pro-Russian sources claimed that Kupiansk has 1 week left, and possibly by the end of this week Kupiansk may come under full control of the RF armed forces. Strikes are also being delivered on AFU positions in the area of Sadov settlement, in the area of Osinov settlement, and in the area of Kupiansk-Vuzlovyi settlement. Let me remind you that previously the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation stated that Sadov came under full Russian control, but confirming information never arrived. The only confirming information today came from Russian forward positions. Thus, we can conclude that Sadov is still not under full control of the RF armed forces, since strikes are now being delivered there on AFU temporary deployment points. Veliki Burluk direction, closing of the pocket. In the Veliki Burluk direction today, there are changes. No news came here today. But let me remind you that yesterday news came that active combat operations are underway toward Kolodyazni settlement and in the area of Dvorichansky settlement. Strikes are being delivered on AFU positions here. Today there are changes. Video material came from one point. Forward positions of Russian forces are located here, and a message comes from pro-Russian sources that here advancement amounted to up to 1.5 kilometers in favor of the Russian army. Messages also came that between Balahovka and Kamenka, The pocket is gradually closing, and all this territory today came under full Russian control. Vovchansk. Clearing continues. From Vovchansk, news and changes are coming. In the area of Vovchansky Khutori, active assault operations on this settlement are underway. Active combat operations are also underway in the area of Sinelnikov settlement. And yesterday there were changes in this section of combat operations. All this territory came under Russian control. The Ukrainian side acknowledged the loss of these territories. Video material also came from Russian forward positions, and the central part is gradually coming under RF, Armed Forces control. Possibly, in the coming couple of weeks, this settlement will completely come under Russian army control. There was also a FAB strike on AFU positions, on an AFU temporary deployment point. Sumy direction, positional battles from the Sumy direction. Basically over the past several weeks only news is coming. Here, as in the Kherson direction, no serious changes are being recorded. Active combat operations are underway in the area of Novomykolaivka settlement, Vorozhba, Yablunivka and Yunakovka. Strikes are being delivered on AFU positions here using FPV drones and artillery. In turn, Russian forces are delivering strikes on AFU positions in the area of Kondrativka settlement, Andreyivka, Oleksiivka, Malakorchakivka, Marine, and in the area of Sadki settlement. The news is the same as for yesterday. No serious changes have been recorded here. And that's all for today, dear friends. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel, leave your likes, and all the best to you.